So welcome to L&D in 20, your go-to resource for all things workplace learning, brought to you by Go1. I'm your host, Dan Hayward, Chief Customer Officer and industry veteran. Today, we're going to be speaking with Marc Zao-Sanders, co-founder and CEO of Filtered, a learning tech company that helps organizations get the best return on their L&D spend. Marc is heavily involved in shaping the future of educational technology, focusing on personalized learning experience powered by intelligent algorithms. He's also the author of Time Boxing, The Power of Doing One Thing at a Time. Marc, welcome to the show.
Dan, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
I know that Filtered Technology has recently conducted a survey around kind of generative AI in the wild. I'd be super interested to hear kind of what were some of the most common and real world applications that you uncovered.
Sure. Well, what we wanted to do with the research was to get to real, gritty, what people were actually doing, not the pontificating commentators, of which there are just, there's so many. So that approach, which was unusual, really resonated with people. And actually, the graphic made it into the print edition of Harvard Business Review. And what the research said, well, number one, there were 100 use cases, and for each use case, there were several stories that we dug up, mostly from Reddit. The number one use case, which really resonated for me personally, because that's how I use large language models myself, mostly, is idea generation. So you're thinking about something, you're writing something, maybe it's a business plan, and you're looking for some ideas to get you going and bring that momentum to you so you can get going. So I do that a lot, and that was cited by the greatest number of Reddit users. That was number one. I think number two was therapy, or as a companion, which raises some eyebrows, it makes some people laugh. Personally, I think it's very interesting because there are some aspects of using an anonymous, non-human LLM that are actually an advantage versus a human adult to speak to. So I think, working out in general where generative AI has an advantage through not being human is a really interesting take, and that's a great example. And because you and I work in L&D, it's nice also to see that positions 8 and 9, there were 2 learning entries. So the first was to enhance the learning experience in general. So an example was, I'm learning C++. If I put in a command like, talk to me, explain this concept as if I'm a 10-year-old, that was very effective for someone who's not super experienced with the programming language. And then number 9, which will be close to Go1's heart, was personalizing the learning experience. So personalized learning. And of course, with generative AI, the whole experience is personalized because you're putting in that prompt. It's very unlikely that exactly the same prompt would be put in by someone else. So actually, the whole experience is personalized anyway. And then very much from within our L&D world. If you think about pull versus push, so the whole experience here is pull and not push. So there's so much, and obviously a lot of it touches on education in some way. Excel formulae was another one. One that I quite liked was making complaints. So very often something will happen in life which is a inconvenience. You kind of feel like you should complain and move the world on in some way, and we'd also get some revenge on whoever's imposed on you in this way. But it just takes too long; it's too much hassle. So someone said their car was wrongly towed away. They made a complaint. They got some money back. Justice was done, and the world was a better place. But I say, if anyone listening, watching, who is interested in this, there was an HBO article. I'm sure you guys have put the link out there. There is the graphic that's in the magazine, but more importantly, or more usefully, I think there's the report. The report has all the actual use cases drawn out of the depths of Reddit. It was pretty painful, to be honest, going through tens of thousands of posts. But that's what we did. We mined it, and for your viewing, reading pleasure.
Yeah, that's great. I think kind of just to double click on the companion piece, an interesting article I read recently was around AI as kind of like coach and mentor. So less of the companion, but more around kind of like, okay, I may not have a mentor in my workplace, but I can ask those sorts of questions. Was that a use case or something that you came across, or something
That
close
came
to
up
that?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
for that use case. So it was
Yeah.
therapy, companion, but I mean those were the two words that we used to
Yeah.
describe the category. Anything that was mentor or coach fell into that as well. Actually, Sam Altman, about just over a year ago, so maybe 3 months after ChatGPT came out, he was asked on one of the podcasts, what do you think is the best use
Hmm.
case that you can see helping us imminently? And he said a learning mentor. So very close to what you're talking about there, and very
Hmm.
close to our industry. So I think this
Yeah.
is one of the respects in which, of course, everyone's interested in what's going on here. But if you
Yeah.
work in L&D, you really should be, because if the CEO of one of the world's most influential companies, certainly in this area, is saying that learning mentors is one of the best use cases, you've got to have some ideas about how to be implementing that, or experimenting with it, or deciding not to experiment with it, but at least to be intentional and have thought about it.
Yeah. If you think about kind of the L&D professional right now, where are some of the ways that you think that they should be thinking about incorporating AI, or some specific kind of like first step use cases if L&D teams are starting to kind of dip their toe in the water here?
I think there are two things to say here. One is that I think it's to first of all see your role as facilitating the not so much the learning of your workforce, but the performance of the workforce, and learning as a means to an end. And if you see it that way, and if you buy some of the studies that say that this technology can enhance the speed of knowledge workers by 25%, improve the quality by 40%, even if you dispute those numbers a lot, let's say you bring them both back down to say 10%, makes you 10% quicker, down 10% better at what you're doing. Well, you compound that for a start, and you've got 21%. So that's a substantial shift, and that's already a lot lower than some of the studies. There's one Harvard study in particular that came up with a 40% figure. But anyway, if you discount substantially, then and you see L&D as being there to enhance performance, it really is incumbent on us to help the workforce make sooner, better, safe use of the technology. So, and to do that, I mean, what do you need? Well, you need safe experimentation. You need to help people find the use cases. And this is a nod back to the research that we did, but obviously it's not just our research. There's lots of research into use cases, because the use cases won't necessarily just fall into people's laps. So helping people find the use cases that really make sense, and getting that to happen, I think, is the best thing that L&D can do. Being really clear as well about what the risks are, what the policy at the company is. Some companies we speak to say, okay, look, we want our staff to do this, but we don't want them to do it at work because we don't want to have any of the risks. So their kind of unofficial policy is experiment, but on your own time, and there'll be benefits for you back at work. So there's a few ways of doing it, and also recognize that whatever your company is, however sort of tech sort of progressive it is, even Microsoft, they don't have everyone just using generative AI all the time, be it Copilot or ChatGPT or some other version. So every company is still sort of exploring and finding out where it's going to work best. I mean, just like that happened with the internet. The internet's been around for 30 years now, but it wasn't mainstream right at the start. People didn't know how they were going to best make use of it right from the start. And it's very similar, I think, with this new tech.
Obviously, a lot of the work you do is around personalization. So, can you just talk the listeners through kind of what do you see as the real benefits from a personalized learning and development experience? How would you frame that up as as a benefit to the organization?
Well, if you think, okay, so personalized learning, I mean, certainly in our industry and our sorts of conversations, it's become a little bit of a cliche. And the problem with cliches is that then people are hearing it and using the term unthinkingly. So I just want to remind people that are listening, watching, that what's the opposite of personalized? The opposite of personalized is where everyone does the same thing. So you have an entire cohort, an entire workforce doing a piece of learning, or some sort of click next experience, which is what you get actually with mandatory learning and compliance. Personalized is different from that because it is an individual finding or being led to some learning experience that they just wouldn't have otherwise, which expands their minds, that really kindles their curiosity, makes them more confident in their role. These are really important things that I think we lose sight of a lot of the time in conversations in L&D. So I think that's the main thing, that people will encounter experiences, think about things in ways that they haven't, and which aren't appropriate for the colleague next door, or in their department, but with different interests. That said, I would say kind of not against it, but just to sort of give a measured response. It is hard to aggregate and benchmark the benefits of personalized learning over non-personalized learning, because if you're trying to help people with their curiosity and to satisfy their interests and intrigue, putting a dollar sign, pound sign, euro sign by that is very, very difficult. I mean, arguably impossible. So I think, as always in conversations with learning, getting to the ROI precisely in financial terms is tough. But the benefit of personalized learning is those magical learning experiences that happen to us all occasionally, and part, I think, of our job is to make those experiences happen more frequently.
Yeah, that's great. And then can you kind of just talk to how you're seeing kind of the advent of AI, or kind of those initial steps into AI really being able to offer more impactful and personalized learning?
We actually don't do it now, but we were in that game for our personalized learning experience, intelligent learning recommendations. Most providers will do something on this now. I know Go1 does, but that's become kind of more common. I think the idea has caught on in learning because of, or largely because of, social media. Mm-hmm. So with social media, we all are presented with a personalized feed, be it on LinkedIn or Instagram or X. Whatever the platform, there's so much content out there. How do you give an individual exactly the content that they want to need to see? And with social, it's very easy to measure success because it's just eyeballs on the page. That's it, done. It's clicks. With what we're doing, it's that, but it's a little bit more. To provide a worthwhile learning experience, you're staying with the user, with the learner, in some way over a number of weeks, months, I mean, maybe even years. And some of that, the positive impact of that is hard to capture. But that ultimately is what AI is doing right now, and doing for us in our industry. Is getting people to the right content through these intelligent learning experiences. Of course, with generative AI, there's additional functionality. I mean, you can generate new content. So there's so much content before, and now there's, near infinite amount of content that can be generated. So I think we're going to have we call it the content chaos, the problem of content chaos. That's the problem that we Filtered are trying to address. That problem became 10x, 100x, 1000x more difficult. It's getting on for 2 years ago that OpenAI came up with ChatGPT. So that's an additional benefit for power, the capability that the industry now has. It's also a danger, but that's the case with all technology, that it can be used wrongly, it can be used to good effect. That's always been the case.
Yeah. So the ROI challenge has been around, as long as, I'm guessing, both of us have been in the industry and long before that. But I think what we see a lot more now, and I know that's something that you advocate, is really around kind of like, maybe it's not just tracking ROI, it's actually tracking progress against skills. So I think kind of one of the things that you see within social, I see it with my own kids. My son taught himself to play guitar from YouTube. And so awesome. It's very hard to be able to track kind of the ROI of hours sat there on his phone or on his laptop. But I can see the level of the skills that he's at, and now we're in a hybrid world where he has an instructor as well. So talk to me a little bit about how you think about kind of like tracking, measuring skills through this interface, and as we move forward with AI, some of the opportunities there.
Well, I think, okay, so with measuring learning, it's very difficult. I mean, we've faced this ever since the beginning of Filtered, which is now some 15 years ago. One of the things that we can do, which gives you some sort of an ROI to start off with, is that because what we do is we run algorithms through content, we match them with skills. We say we give some advice to a client. Okay, well, given the skills profile that you're after at your workforce, you maybe don't need this library. You don't need this library. You could bring this one in, and that makes better sense for you. The great thing about that in terms of our ROI is that you can just say, well, look, there was this cost saving. So that's not all that interesting, but it is ROI, that it's a number that you can really point to make the case. And then, of course, the downstream impact of learning and discovery and all this, the wonderful stuff, the magic, that can kind of be added on top. So, I mean, the other thing I'd say, though, is that with AI coming in, it may be that we can use the technology to give us a better sense of how we're progressing. I mean, for example, I don't know, let's pick a specific example. One I generally use is listening attentively, which is important in an experience like I'm having with you right now. Okay, so it's how are you going to assess whether I listen attentively or not? I mean, you could ask me some questions about it, but that would just test whether I know what is involved in listening attentively. It doesn't mean I listen attentively. You can't stay with me over the next 3 months and monitor my progress and give me a score, but AI potentially can. AI can get its claws into a lot of areas that no human being can. So I do think that if that's a path we want to go down, we really want to track everything, and take the opposite approach of this tech company I just mentioned, then AI potentially does offer some solutions. Against that, though, you've got privacy issues, because for AI to really know everything about you, it needs to know everything about you. And that might be good for your boss, if you have that kind of a boss, but it may not be good for you. You may not choose to have people delving into every email that you've written, every Teams message that you've sent. So again, there's a flip side with all of this technology, but it comes with it's very powerful, and that can go either way.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. So now let's move on to our next segment. It's called the 60-second budget breakdown. So obviously you're working with a lot of L&D leaders, and I'd be interested to get your perspective on, if you had to kind of advocate for them to focus their budgets on one or two things, what would that be right now?
I think, first of all, you need to think about what your strategy is. So the best CLOs, the best learning leaders that I've come across, the ones that I've found most impressive when they talk about what they're doing at their firm, it always starts off with developing a strategy. And actually, before they're developing a strategy, they're finding the lie of the land. They're working out what's going on in the industry. So that sounds very obvious, but is it always done? I mean, absolutely not. And if you've got a strategy and some sort of a vision, then the downstream decisions, they don't get taken care of, but you've got a guide for each and every one of them. So I say that's number one. And I find it particularly impressive when you hear from a CLO that, well, we really were focusing on these two things or these three things, and then everything else came off the back of that. I think the second thing which is really important as well, obviously, is getting the right team around you, the right people on the bus. You might say, now this is a point of contention, you want the team on board first in order to develop the strategy, or maybe you need the strategy first in order to recruit the right team. I don't know. I think that's a little bit chicken and egg, and you can kind of argue that either way. But I think, say, those two are very, very important.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And I think kind of on a couple of the other podcasts, we've had conversations around L&D. When L&D functions best, it's a strategic business partner. So you're kind of, not only you've got a strategy, but your strategy is aligned and in lockstep with the overall objective of the organization, so that everything you do, every lever you pull, is impacting the broader business. And then your CFO, your COO.
And you're more likely to win an argument that way internally if you're aligned. You're not then butting heads with IT or marketing or whoever it is. You absolutely want to be aligned, and it's so easy to say. It's much harder to actually do, because you get in the door and there's all these other pressures and what have you. But the basics are basics for a reason.
Yeah, great, thank you. So moving on to the next segment, lifelong learnings. Would love to kind of for you to share a situation or a challenge that turned out differently than you expected, kind of positively or negatively, as you've kind of progressed throughout your career?
Well, look, I mean, things turn out unexpectedly all the time. I mean, every single day. I mean, probably within every single hour. And it's very easy to be put out by them going, plans going awry, going wrong, using that kind of terminology even.
Yeah.
But every one of those setbacks, annoyances, insults, even detours, roadblocks, is an opportunity. And it reminds me, this question, of the Rumi poem. Do you know it, The Guest House? So the idea is that everything that happens, you should treat it as a guest in a guest house. If it's difficult, it's a challenge to be used. If it's joyful, it's something to take joy in. A lot of those cliches, if it doesn't kill you and makes you stronger, well, it's sort of the same kind of idea. So keeping that in mind, actually, the end of the poem goes, it's very, very nice. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And of course, when you're in the thick of it, it's not like I just recite this poem and I'm instantly, not feeling irritated anymore. But when you can come back to a mantra like that, it can help you 20%, 30%, and in some cases more than that, with with the unexpected, with what might feel unwelcome at the time.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's very stoic. Every obstacle is the way. It makes you move forward. Fantastic. Okay, so the final segment now is kind of self-development hacks. Very interested to kind of understand, where do you go to grow? What would be your favorite kind of L&D resource, content that you like to go back to, anything like that?
Okay, so I'd say two things. I mean, one, I am a big fan of Harvard's articles because they're short, they're generally high quality, and if you get the right topic at the right time for you, then it's really handy. So I'd actually just encourage people to have a think, what's your favorite HBR article? One of my favorite articles is from HBR. It's called Clear Writing Means Clear Thinking. It's from 1973, so that indicates there's an evergreen component to it. It's been around for over 50 years. The other thing I would say about this, though, is I like gifts that keep on giving. So if you follow the right person's Substack or X account or LinkedIn account, then you get their posts, now and forevermore. And there's two people I'd call out here. One's Peter Gostev. He's certainly on LinkedIn, and I follow him there. He's an AI expert and just produces good stuff all the time. And he's less known than some people. And then Nicholas Thompson, who's he's the CEO of the Atlantic, or the chief editor. But anyway, he does a very good video on tech every morning and or every day, and I think that's really good as well. But yeah, gifts that keep on giving are even better gifts than just give once.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, Marc, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all of your insights and a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thank you, Dan.
So thanks for tuning into the show. I'm Dan Hayward, Chief Customer Officer, and that wraps up another episode of L&D in 20. We hope you found today's discussion as engaging as we did. Whether you're listening on the go or at your desk, we'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, keep learning.
This show is brought to you by Go1, the most diverse learning content aggregator. To learn how you can empower your employees with the right content at the right time, all in one subscription, visit go1.com or click the link in the show notes. And to stay up to date on future episodes of L&D in 20, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.